And these are people.
You are watching part 3 with Sheila Delaney, episode 90. I hope you have already watched part 1 and 2 with Sheila Delaney Duke. Amazing and rich conversation in both the episodes, and this is the third. And I hope you will send me your feedback and comments and let me know which episode did you like. And if you like the podcast Light Up with Schwa, please do let me know about that too. If you haven't before, please do so. Subscribe, share, rate, and review. And join in on my Facebook page or any other platform that you like to engage on. And stay tuned for more.
To find your place that is steeped in compassion, and whatever that looks like, whatever action that takes, whether that, not everybody has a stomach for being an out loud amplifier. But if you can at least be an advocate to a woman who is wearing a hijab in a grocery store in a difficult position, and you just go and stand near her, if that is the only thing that you do, bless you. For those of us who are willing to step out and to have our voices heard and to be willing to make mistakes. And I've had to say to these, my women friends in particular, especially around Black Lives Matter, I'm going to make mistakes. Please greet me with love and care and correct me.
Yeah.
Help me to do better and to learn what it means to do allyship well. And remind me to listen. If I get talking, please feel free. Shut me up and remind me to listen.
What is the most important skill that you can tell people to try to at least have it or learn to have it that you must be good at? I'm kind of quizzing you now.
Suspend your disbelief.
Okay.
And what I mean by that.
One more I want you to say. Suspend your disbelief. And what else do you do when you are coaching or being a parent or being a teacher?
Oh, listening. Yep.
Yes. Yeah. That's what I wanted you to say. Isn't that a big part of your teaching?
Absolutely. And it is so beyond listening with our ears. It is listening with an open heart and letting our body receive information that's shooting right past our ears.
Yeah.
My daughter might look at me and say, I'm fine. And my ears pick that up. Now I also pick up the tone, but I see how she's standing or how, if there's something else going on. I see it with clients all the time. The pauses and the silences, listening for those, listening for what is unspoken, listening for those places where somebody is measuring their words. So there's that moment where somebody might be talking along and they'll take a pause like that.
Yeah.
And then they start to craft. And if they're in crafting, then I become curious. Either one or two things might be.
That can be a second language too, so don't take it too seriously.
Right. No, that's exactly right. Right? Because sometimes it's very simple.
Yeah.
It is second language.
Yeah.
Sometimes it is really wanting to be poetic and impactful.
That is true.
And sometimes it's because I just got uncomfortable even with my own message because I don't know what it is.
Yeah. Thank you. Anything that you admire about your faith?
So the thing that I most love about where I am now in my spiritual journey is my absolute conviction that there is a time for everything under the sun and that it's all okay. For example, me going into depression, there's a time, that's a season and it will pass. And so coming to this place of understanding that's not a character flaw. Anger is not a character flaw. Making mistakes, so as well as being unapologetic about our strengths. I'm a wildly empathic person, and that's one of my superpowers. And I happen to also have pretty good facility with language and words in terms of being able to express what I mean. And so I don't have to be apologetic about the things that are my strength and downplay those. And I'm also not embarrassed about having struggled with depression or getting angry, as long as I am willing to clean up any external impacts of that. That is the sweetest thing about, I think, where I'm now. And also gives me permission to see to really genuinely impart that to others. The thing that's awkward
If there is anything, I mean,
There,
it doesn't
you know
have to
what?
be.
So this is very specific to my journey. I kind of forget how to pray.
Hmm.
I was meditating on this morning. There's this tree, beautiful tree that I visit every morning that I walk and commune with. And I realized the Christian tradition has a very specific formula for prayer, and it was always very meaningful to me. But now that the pantheon, if you will, has expanded, I don't know how to incorporate that into my prayer life. And so that's something that I feel very awkward in right now, is just learning if I'm not saying, Dear Heavenly Father, am I saying, Dear Heavenly Mother? Am I saying, I'm still sitting with
So
that.
praying in terms of words, is there a physical action or posture or ritual that you do that part of prayer? Is there anything like that?
Most often, well, there is not so much anymore.
Okay.
Except that is. So I keep an altar now, and that is a place where I'm still, and I drop into meditation, and that is where my prayer life exists mostly now. Would be in my meditation. I'm feeling that there's something important about that question of posture that I'll be mulling over, because there is something I feel that's really beautiful about lying prostrate in surrender. But for me, that would be on the earth, and so I'll have to feel into that question. That's interesting. I feel like I wish there were, and that would probably help me to ground my practice actually beyond the meditation and just, being out in nature.
Okay. We might come around that too. Okay, good.
So this is interesting. This is a learning place right now in our home. Because while for me, actually the act of going to church is sometimes, not always, but it's sometimes quite painful for me. And I have...
Painful?
Well,
what do you mean by that?
Well,
if you don't mind my asking.
It is, I love our pastor. I love singing. I love the community. There are good people, imperfect people, but good people. The part that is painful is that my daughters are growing up without seeing themselves represented in the faces of God.
So you're in evangelical church?
Yes.
Evangelical.
Yes,
church.
evangelical.
Yeah. Okay.
And my husband is very committed to that, and so he goes every week. And one or both of the girls will go. I will sometimes go, but if I go, they know, me being me, and Taliesin Grenfell-Lee. She and her beautiful twin sister have inspired me. So I change the words to the songs I'm singing, inspired by them. So if we're singing a hymn that speaks to kingdom, I now sing kingdom, and I really bring with me the feminine archetypes, and I hold the feminine face of God while I'm in church. And sometimes that feels very jarring. Like I feel an internal dissonance. And that's the part that's painful.
Okay.
Our kids are figuring it out. They're going to church. They have a way of being with the church. What I want above all, and my mom was very good about this with me when I was deeply involved in the youth group, she just wanted me asking questions. She said, believe what you want, even here in this church, but don't buy it hook, line, and sinker without engaging your intellect.
Do you also introduce them to other faiths, or do you educate them or encourage them in any form? Is that a practice in Christianity in general, or in evangelical church?
Unfortunately, it has not been my experience.
Okay.
In the church itself.
Okay.
Now, for me, that's definitely a very important part of how I speak to my kids. And that includes religion and faith. That includes the idea of gender. That includes sexual identity. So all of those things. Generally, the way it's happened so far is talking about the outward expressions of faith and creating space for all of those to coexist. So a number of things come up. I think this is exactly the right conversation that I wish I were having every day. As a parent, we include it in the conversation, but we don't live in a particularly diverse area.
Okay.
So the diversity in the elementary school I went to was exponentially higher than where my kids go.
Okay.
And, they go to school with a lot of kids with a lot of wealth and a lot of privilege, and predominantly white and predominantly Christian. Because I think it's in our conversation, but it's not yet in our experience.
Okay. That's a good way to put it. Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay,
so that is slightly more present for my dancer because she's exposed to a more diverse group of people that are connected by a little bit of eccentricity as artists. So she's around more languages. She's around more skin color. She's around less religious diversity, but definitely language and ethnic diversity.
So you were saying that, can you talk about healing? What do you mean by healing our stories? What it is and how do you view as a coach? Can you elaborate on that?
Yes. So I think we hold stories. Stories are so integral to the human experience, and they help us to make sense of, and they help us direct what we can wonder about and where we can direct our inquiry, right? And they can facilitate a lot of limiting beliefs, right? So if I made up a story when I was 7, that if I have an unusual dream or vision, that is going to get me hated, feared, and ostracized, I would never, ever share that part of me because my story would be, if that, then I am not safe. And so I necessarily build a little shelter for that part of me, and I kind of keep her locked away.
Okay. Yeah.
So the stories then, to heal the story, it's kind of like we want to free up the energy, or if you will, the calorie burn around, we want to free up the calories that we spend defending, deflecting, pretending it doesn't exist, overcompensating for, or being victimized by all of those stories. So the act of healing is really about liberating, destabilizing that story so that that energy is freed up for better living, for living with wellness, with intention.
So how would you do that? Like if you're not defending it, then you should acknowledge it or just say it and not be apologetic about it?
So what I would say about limiting beliefs, the practice that I often will take people through is we start looking first at what is that first story. And just the awareness that we made up a story based on the resources we had available to us at the time can be really a really powerful point of awareness, because the tools that we created to make sense of the world when we were 7 or 12 or 17 are not the same tools that I need at 48. So in the natural order of things, just acknowledging that we make up stories to make sense of the world is really powerful. Sometimes just that. If that's the only thing we get that my clients walk away with, great good has been done. But what we'll do often is we take that originating story or a wounding story, if that's what it is, and we recraft it and we say, what if that was a single use only tool? What if there is a new way of being that's possible now? What would you want that to be? And so you go through sort of the semantics first, and then we begin to move into emotional fluency, which we've talked about, which is the ability to discern between, I think of emotions and I experience emotions as frequencies, right? Like notes on a piano or a keyboard, and being able to distinguish between C and B flat in the emotional frequency is really helpful, because that helps us to bring more intention and allow an emotional energy that's attached to a story to move through us more cleanly. So that emotional frequency looks like, for a client I'm working with right now who is being accused of being outrageous and angry and hostile and all of these things. I asked her at one point, and she's a genius. She's a surgeon. She's incredibly bright, accomplished, top of her field. I would ask her, can you feel the difference between outrage and anger? And at first she looked at me like I had two heads. She was like, what? And then I watched her drop in. She said, oh, they are different. I said, yes, they are. What difference does that make for you? And suddenly she's got an increased language. She has a broader array, and she might realize, oh, I can be angry without acting out, but when I'm outraged, that's when I get in trouble. Right? So then we start paying attention to finer details, and that it influences our behavior, which influences the feedback loop that we get that helps us to affirm the new stories that we're crafting, that I am worthy, I am not broken, I am whole, I'm entitled to my human experience, and so are you. And we just disrupt any of the stories that limit us and keep us small and locked in that shed in the back.
Nice. Thank you. Can you tell people what is a healthy, fulfilling life?
I would say what it is for me is when I can walk through the world kind of delighted or in wonder at the human experience, when we can see ourselves as part of this divine playground, part of nature. A healthy, fulfilling life values myself as one part of creation and honors other people as part of creation, right? And if we're both part of creation, just because you're a tree and I'm a rose bush doesn't make either of us wrong, right? But we both have to plug into the same compassion, to the same earth, to receive the nourishment and the nutrients to continue to blossom and bloom and grow.
Good.
So that's what I would say.
So do you enjoy what you do? Like this work that you have now?
Yeah.
The space and place that you are in?
I can't believe I get to do the work that I do.
Really?
It really, I mean, I enjoyed the law because I enjoyed the intellect of it. Love being surrounded by really smart people, doing really interesting work. But I really love being able to have a front row seat to somebody's human experience and their evolution and their transformation. And so whether I'm doing that one-on-one or whether it's, through a women's program that I lead and watching the women come together in a kind of sisterhood experience where women begin to witness other women, there's something potent and magical that happens when women start to learn deeply how to hold space for each other and learn how to be seen fully. Yeah.
Do you see yourself as a problem solver now? Have you ever seen yourself that way? No.
You know how I see myself? Part of my magic is the ability to sit inside a problem. Me up. So sort of there's this whole, like the water has been changed in a fish tank.
Good example.
There's this freshening that happens. But if while I'm acclimatizing to the new water, if I get dropped into, okay, now I have to race home and drop into carpool and do dinner, although my husband does really more of the dinners than I do. If we drop into those places too quickly, again, it's the transition that'll get me. And that's where I can find myself falling flat. And that's where the exhaustion will get me, is sort of the day-to-day. But the self-care becomes so important then. For example, whenever I leave a full retreat where I've been holding space maybe for 3 days, or even if it's been for half a day, we're in the fortunate position I live 2 blocks from Lake Washington. And so I will go and I will ground my hands just in the edge of the water on the rocks, and I make an offering to the earth in that way of all of the things that I'm holding that I don't want to take with me. And I trust that it's going to be recycled and regenerated, kind of like my carbon dioxide is by the trees. And that helps a lot.
Nice. Well, one thing that you like about yourself and something that you want to change. I mean, if there is nothing to change, that's fine. And if you don't like one, well, you'd better like one thing about yourself.
Yeah, I do. It's so lovely to be at the stage of my life where I'm quite in love with myself.
Wow, nice.
in a pretty healthy way. Yeah, like
nice.
Even when I'm messing things up, what I am most grateful for is my ability to regenerate
Is it just something with the 40s or reaching 50s or
I
maybe
think it
hitting
must be
50s?
reading. Yeah, we kiss the 50s and we start to be,
Yeah.
but I no longer believe that
Self-value.
I'm defined by any single experience or moment.
Okay.
And that is so incredibly liberating because when I mess up, I have an incredible amount of self-trust at my ability to clean it up and take responsibility, both for myself in terms of self-forgiveness, which is usually the hiccup I see with the clients. Like really the first thing isn't, do you fix everybody else? No, can you forgive yourself enough to drop back in? So that's probably what I'm most grateful for and what I most love about myself. The one thing I would like to change that I wish I could do better, probably, I'm so gifted at being present, at being deeply present, that I'm not always as connected as I could be to the future. Right? Okay. So in terms of being more planful or more strategic, right? I have all the skill sets. I even have the degrees behind me to grow a business that would, fill in the blanks. But it's not really what motivates me. The interactions, the experiences themselves motivate me. And I would love it if I could really honor and elevate both of those things. I wonder what would be possible. And then for me, the environment is so very much about Mama Gaia, earth energy. There's, and I'm under no illusions. She does not need us. And she could spin us all off in a heartbeat and she will be fine, right? But we sure need her. So there's a very spiritual, heart-centered place for me where I feel like when I go out and I stand barefoot in our grass, which I do regularly, and I will earth, it's part of my practice. And so I really feel that, walking as though I'm kissing the earth.
Yes.
Yeah. And as though she's kissing me back.
Oh, nice.
And so the environment is very, very alive for me. I'm very connected to the energies of trees. And
any message for the world about the climate and the environment that we are in?
Please believe the science.
Okay.
Please believe the science. So that is the primary message. And the second is that even if we didn't have the science, if we are listening, I'm sorry, there's a plane going by.
Okay.
Okay.
That's part of our world.
Even if we have issues with the science, or that's not what speaks to us first, if you stand in a place rich with nature, if you stand near a tree and feel and listen through your body, everything will change. Everything will change. It becomes a part of my coaching practice. I will tell my clients when the hummingbirds come to visit and I see them in the tree outside my window. So we just have to listen with our bodies and we will know what is true. And, so that's the hope part. And then there's a real sense of urgency. We got to do better. And, I feel deep grief about the fact that it's our youth that will need to save us, and great hope that they are equipped for the task.
Thank you.
Yes.
All right. What is the value of gratitude in your life?
I'm pausing because I almost can't say enough.
Yes, I know.
To walk through the world remembering, even in depression, even in the throes of depression, that I can be grateful that I have 5 fingers that articulate is a wonder to me, right? That I have a wrist that bends. And so when I move through my day connected to that sense of gratitude, it inevitably for me ignites wonder, which for me is my fuel that I burn probably more than anything. And so it's been medicinal. I've had health crises, myself, and gratitude has been deeply healing. Even as my dad was dying, there are so many gratitude-filled moments. So I'd say the biggest moments, both crises and ecstatic, if you will, gratitude has been that common liberating experience.
Thank you. So thank you for that.
And so what I believe, and I used to say this when I was in the church, I was like, my faith is so deep that I trust the packaging, if you will, or the structure of the faith, as I rise to meet it, the right structures will appear. And that has continued to be true.
Wonderful.
It's quite a privilege, this life, this experience, this human experience.
Exactly. Yeah.
It's beautiful. And I'd say one of the things I'm becoming more adept at, even with my most corporate linear analytical clients, is to say, give me a moment and let me drop in.
Yeah.
So that I know, and sometimes I'll tell them, and even when my husband and I have difficult conversations, sometimes I will tell him, I'm going to speak very slowly. It's not because I think you're stupid.
I like that. That's a good idea. I think I was unconsciously doing that.
Right. Yeah,
That works.
saying,
that works,
it does.
Actually.
Yeah, I don't, especially because I'm so in love with language. Sometimes I can get on a ramp of expressing the bigness of the experience I have as a woman. I'm like, no, that's not all important right now. It's not always all important. So slowing down, talking more slowly, fewer adjectives and adverbs. Yeah.
Nice. Have you found the purpose in your life, Sheila? What is it?
I can say yes.
Okay, good.
So I do think, so I was anointed, if you will, in a program that I did, a really beautiful program I did with a number of other coaches. And I was anointed in that group, the guardian and keeper of mattering.
Okay.
And it did not even mean then, and it was something I claimed and then was witnessed in. And that is coming more and more and more to richness and fullness. So my purpose, I really believe, part of my gifting is to point to meaning and purpose and to be able to identify the nut of what matters in a very big experience. So in crisis, everyone thinks it's the problem. I'm like, well, maybe it's the problem, but maybe it's this, this different thing. And so I have a lens that allows me to point to the heart, always the heart of a person, of an experience, of a group. Even in the news, even if I'm weeping the whole time I'm watching the news, when I step into it, I can remember there is something here that is sacred, that matters deeply, that is mine to hold as a line of sight. And then if I can continue to amplify that, and the idea there is something sacred in all things, all experiences, then that would be a good life. That would be a good life.
Any message of hope? I know you gave some before, but I want you to give as many as you can.
I guess this one, the big one, I think I've said it already.
Yeah.
I think it's two things. One, if you look for it, there is something beautiful and sacred for which we can be grateful in the most unlikely places. And that can be an invitation, even in our darkest moments. Can we find it? And we don't have to celebrate and have a personality change and go have a party now. But, if I can just connect, maybe this is not for nothing. And then related to that is this idea that there is a time for everything under the sun. And I mean everything. So I mean our light and our celebration and our strength and our might and our power and our shame and our disregard and our grief, all of it. And it is all worthy of our attention. So if you're in those places, this is why I offer it as hope, when we're in those places of depression, of deep grief, of great sorrow, to really honor it. Because if you're grieving it, it is something worthy of carving out the space to grieve it well, or grieve a person well. So
thank you.
Yeah. Thank you.
My last question. What lights you up, Sheila? I'm sure many things light you up.
So many things.
You can say a few, but one thing.
Okay. I love conversations like this. It lights me up to connect with people who are willing to be and to put themselves into the world. And that I get to be a witness to that. And sometimes that is the medicine that I have to offer, is to say, I see you and I receive you. And it is my joy to do so. Right? So So conversations like this, and also just this idea of being able to elevate the human experience when we are feeling something, and that doesn't mean perfecting it. That doesn't mean it's all roses and glory, but increasing our view so that we are less buffeted and beaten by the hard moments that come with being human, and not denigrating those and not minimizing those and calling that the elevated life. No, it's about deeply embodying all of those moments.
Can you give an example? Can you give an example? Just,
Yes. So at the clearest moments for me in depression or anxiety, being able to remember it's okay to have depression and anxiety was the most expansive healing thing I could offer to myself, is to not make myself wrong for feeling it. For not getting stuck in a story that says, but I'm a healer, I'm a coach, I'm an activator, I work with energy, I have to be up all the time, it's my job, I need to uphold everybody. To give myself the permission and the space to say, that is an illusion of the human experience, helped in a very concrete way to get me through the darkest days when it was a little bit painful just to get out of bed. And the only thing that would get me out of bed on some of those days was my commitment to my children. I had to drive somebody somewhere. I had to get them somewhere. And, so that remembering that in those hard moments that you are still holy and divine and sacred and beloved and beautifully and wonderfully made. And you don't have to be happy all the time to be that, right? And for those of us who are happy, claim that too, right?
Don't hide it.
No, because I think we're getting much better at vulnerability,
yes.
But there's almost a distortion now. It's almost like a competition to say, oh, look how bad I am at this. And everyone goes, oh, you're so vulnerable. And that's cool. But now being able to be truly vulnerable with our strengths as well, and to be able to say, you know what, I have a superpower in this area. And I'm not ashamed of it. And to say it, right? That doesn't make me arrogant or egotistical or all of, those kinds of things. So claiming it all, the fullness of the human experience.
Wonderful.
That lights me up. And it's probably because I'm not particularly subtle.
Well, thank you so much, Sheila. Thank you for your time, your insights, your presence, your smiling face. It's really nice to have you. Thank you so much.
Thank you. Thank you, Sean. Thank you for your medicine in the world to bring this level of genuine, honest, open conversation. I think that's one of the things that'll heal the world, right? If we don't look away. Just not looking away is so potent. Mm-hmm. And then to engage in a rich conversation and a dialogue that's so open-hearted, which I think is what you bring, that makes it really easy to meet you there, is it's good medicine.
Thank you for watching part 3 with Sheila Delaney. Hope you have enjoyed all the episodes with her and have subscribed to the channel. Please do let me know what you think about my podcast, Light Up with Shwa, and send your comments and feedback. And I will be waiting for your comments. Thank you.